Hi, welcome to this first of a four-part series on how to compare definitive maps of rights of way with aerial views and with other maps. This is based on the definitive map of Warwickshire, but obviously it applies across more of the UK. Now in this first part we're going to be using three files, and I'll show you these three files here. The first one is a definitive map extract of Tippers Hill Farm in North Warwickshire, and the next one is the Google aerial view that we're going to work with, and then finally we have the extract of the same area, this time from the Warwickshire right-of-way reporting tool. I'm going to show you that first, and here it is. And you can see in the centre there, footpath 175/M352/1, with a building apparently obstructing the footpath. We don't have to use this method for obstruction. We can just use it generally to find out exactly or more accurately where a footpath runs. So this is the definitive map extract we're using. You can see M352 in the centre there, and this is the aerial view that we're going to match it to. So the first thing we do is to open the definitive map extract in the GIMP program. Now GIMP is free open source software. It's available for Linux and Windows. You can think of it as the free open source version of Photoshop. So here it has loaded the image, and it's loaded this in a layer. That's a common feature of image manipulation programs, that you load various images in layers. So this is the one and only layer that we have. Across the top you can see a ruler, and that goes 0 to 3000 pixels across there and 0 to 3000 pixels down there. Notice that the vertical measurement, the Y measurement here, starts at the top and goes to the bottom, which is the opposite of what a grid reference will do. A grid reference would start at the bottom and go to the top. The reason for this is because this is a computer graphics program, and computer graphics necessarily starts at the top and works its way down. If you think of a piece of paper coming out of a printer, you'll see that that's how it has to be. So I'll now take you on a quick tour of other features of the GIMP program, and we'll start off by showing you this little bit down here. This is the coordinates of the current position of the cursor on the screen. Because it's negative at the moment because I'd run the cursor off the left-hand side. But if I roll the cursor around the image, you can see those numbers changing to show you what's what. What we've also got down here is the ability to zoom in and out by various amounts. Up here in the top left-hand corner, we have the toolbox, and this has three tools that we're interested in. This one here, which is the move tool, and that allows you to move a layer on the screen. We have the measure tool, and this allows you to measure between points around the image. And here we have the paths tool, which allows you to define a path. Over here on the right hand side, we have the layers area, and here we will have various layers. As you load a layer, the individual layers will be shown here. The eye icon lets you turn a layer on or off, and we'll find that very useful in a bit. The other point to notice about this is that these are in the order in which the layers will be displayed. So that this will be laid on the top, and this will be next, and this will be next, and so on. These layers can be selected, so other things that you do to it depends on which layer is selected. So you can do things to various different layers, whether or not they're displayed according to whether or not they're selected. Above here, we have this opacity control here. Now, this here allows you to vary the opacity of the layer that is currently selected. So if it's 100% opacity, you can't see through it at all. If it's 0% opacity, you can't see it. It's invisible. You're looking right through it. And we'll use that later because we'll make the map a little bit translucent, reduce its opacity, and then we'll be able to see through it to see the definitive map beneath it. Here we have a selection where we can select between showing layers and showing paths. You can also show channels, but that's not relevant to us. So the method is to draw out this path, to trace this path, extract it as a separate path, and then import it back in again, bring it back in again, and then compare it, then bring in the aerial view, scale the aerial view so that it's the same scale as this map, make it a bit opaque, compare the two, and then put the path on top of it. So that's a quick overview of what we're going to do. So we're going to start with the tracing the path. So I need to make this a lot bigger. Now this is an important stage in terms of getting the accuracies right. So I'm going to rush this a little bit, but do please take your time doing this and get this as accurate as you can. And of course, the whole thing about this method is that you can repeat this over and over and over again as you get better at it, and so refine your results and hopefully get better. I'll just trace along here. You can click as many points as you like, you can take as long as you like. One of the things we want to do here is to draw as much of this as we can. So we don't just want to draw in the area that we're interested in, we want to draw beyond that. So as we can check that we're getting a good registration. So if we go over here and we go to this area here, and instead of layers we select paths, we now have the path. And you can actually see in that tiny little thumbnail there, you can see the line of the path. Now the path's unnamed, doesn't matter, we don't need it to be named, so I won't bother naming it. But what I will do is I'll export that path. And I'll export that to the same location we had before, and I'm going to call it, imaginatively, I'm going to call it path, and I'm going to give it a type of SVG. Now SVG stands for Scalable Vector Graphic. So what this basically means is that you can display this at any resolution. You can make it bigger, you can make it smaller, and it doesn't affect the accuracy of it. doesn't affect, because it's done in terms of vectors, in terms of directions. Now, that all sounds a bit complicated. Don't need to worry about it. It's actually much simpler than that. It's really not a problem. We can delete this path, by the way, because we finished with it now. So what I want to do now is go back to our file folder here, and here you can see this file path.svg, which we've just created. So I'm going to right click on that, and I'm going to open it in Notepad, because this is just a text file, and here it is. Now, at first sight, this might look a bit complicated, a bit terrifying, but in actual fact, it's very simple. What we've got here is some beginning blurb. This here says it's an SVG file, and here we've got the end of the SVG area. And here is what kind of object it is, and it's a path object. Now, because this is SVG, this might be a circle, might be a square, might be a triangle, could be a variety of different types of objects. But this particular one is a path. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to change the color to red, and we're going to change the width to 10 pixels wide. Now, the reason for doing that is just to make it more visible and more obvious. The other change I'm going to make is I'm going to change this 3000 here. You notice that 3000, 3000, that's the size in pixels of the square. And I'm going to change this to this, because I just find that makes life a bit easier. Just to give you a bit of extra detail here, which you don't need, this here says that it's a path object. This here gives its name, if you remember, we didn't name it. And this here is the data that defines the object, the graphical object. So this is a command saying move to this location, in terms, obviously in pixels. And this says draw a curve from this pair of coordinates to this pair of coordinates, and then to this pair of coordinates, and so on, all the way down here. And that defines the line. Right, just save that. Now, we go back to our program here. And what we're going to do is we're going to open this as a layer. Just accept that. And there we go, and there it is. So I'll drop this back out to 25% so you can see. And I'll go to the layers section over here. And you can see now we've got two layers. We've got a layers, which is the path, and we've got a layer, which is the definitive map. So I can turn these on and off individually using these eye icons. So I can turn off the map, or I can turn off the path. And so you can see from this that this pretty accurately follows the path on the definitive map, about as accurately as you could expect, really. I'll leave that turned off, and what I'll do now is I'll bring in, open again as a layer, and this time I'll bring in the aerial view. So there's the aerial view. I'll select the move icon, move tool, and you can see here that this matches roughly what we've got here. So you can see various points where it matches. But however, what's quite obvious, I think, is that this is by quite a long way that it's not scaled the same. So somehow we have to make this scale the same as this. Now, the way we're going to do this is we're going to pick a pair of landmarks, and we're going to measure the distance between the landmarks on the definitive map, and measure the distance between the landmarks on the aerial view, and then we're going to scale the aerial view so that they're both at the same scale, and then we'll be able to overlay the aerial view on top of the map. That's the plan. Now the ones that I've chosen for this, you could use lots of them, there's lots of possibilities here, but the ones I'm going to choose are these electricity pylons here. Now I've done this before quite a few times, and I can vouch for the fact that these are pretty accurate and pretty worthwhile using. So I'm going to up the scale of this, because again, the name of the game here is to be accurate. There we go, so we get the two of those in. I'm going to choose the measure tool, and I'm going to click first of all on here and then drag across to here. Now the measurement, the actual result here, now pops up, not there, it pops up here, and here you can see the measure tool saying how many pixels it is. So we need to write this down, 1271.2. Take your time doing this, this is an important point from an accuracy perspective. So we finish with that. Now we need to go to the aerial view, which is here, and we need to do the same here. And in fact, I'm going to expand this even more here, because obviously this is a different scale. I need to make it bigger, so I'm going to push this up slowly, but we can still see this. Now I know from experience that here are the two pylons, these are the shadows of the pylons, and I know from having done this before that in actual fact we can use the shadows quite effectively. So I'll choose the measuring tool again, the measuring tool is still selected actually, and we'll measure between the tops of the pylons. There we go, and what measurement do we get here? I can see again if we look down here, we now have this measurement here of 519.5 pixels. There you go, splendid. I'll just move this back to pixel, right, and then let's go back to 25%. So okay, so we know now what the two values are. So obviously the ratio that we need to do this is the ratio between these two numbers. So I'll feed these in here, 1271.2 divided by 519.5, and that's the ratio. So we need to increase the size of that by a factor of 2.44, but we're going to have to do this as a percentage, so we just want to multiply that by 100. So what we do is we right click on that image, and notice that the Google Aerial View is what is selected, the layer that's selected over here, that's important. And then we scale layer. Now, there's two things to note here. The first is just this link here. This makes sure that that the aspect ratio, the ratio of the height to the width, stays the same. So we do want those to be linked. So keep those linked, and we need to change this to %. Oh, that's entirely the wrong figure. I've not picked up the. I've not actually picked this up somehow. There we go, and that's got the two pretty much the same, and then we scale it. So now, making sure we've got the move tool chosen, we can now see that this matches much better now this particular area, and we can see that it matches in various places really quite well. If you look around the boundaries here, you can see that we've got various boundaries matching up all the way around here, including there. But that's a bit crude. I'm going to increase this up to, that's too far, increase this a bit. And what I'm going to do is, making sure that it's the Google Aerial View that's selected, I'm going to reduce the opacity. And I'm going to reduce it down to about 85%. I find works with this particular image. You'll have to experiment with that. There you go. And while I'm here, actually, I will just move the path to be on the top. Just while I'm here. Right, so now, what we can do now is we can adjust this now. So see, actually, that was quite accurate there already. And you see there's a boundary you can see up there. So we need to get that boundary aligned on there. And we need to align this down here, this line here, align it here. And we need to do our best to align this in all the various places, all the way around. There we go. I think that's probably about as good as we're going to get. So now I'm going to drop out the definitive map. We just got this. I'm going to change the opacity of this to 100%. And now I'm going to turn on the path. And there's the path on top of the definitive, on top of the Google view. And that looks like a pretty good match to me. So what we can now do is we can zoom in, and we can see now with quite some degree of certainty, that this runs across this barn. See, there's one there, and there's one there, and there's one above it. Pretty much it runs across the northern line of that particular barn. What we can also see is that this quite possibly is obstructed here. Now, something we can do here, we still have the move tool, is we can adjust this, because maybe that should be a bit tighter in the corner over there. Maybe. Let's go across and see what it does to that. Yeah, that's still acceptable. So maybe that's a slightly more accurate view. Then again up here, should this be on here? Or should this be on here? Which of these two tracks should it be? Probably, it probably ought to be on that track. So one of the things that we can emphasize here is that there can be room for a matter of opinion. So I'm deliberately showing you that we have a variety of different places that this might go in order to show you that this can be a little bit a matter of opinion. There is room for, there's a bit of wiggle room there going on. So you can see here that this garage just escapes obstructing this bit of footpath. So there we have it. So something I want to emphasize here at the end of this talk is about what it is that contributes to the accuracy of this. So the first one is the accuracy of how you trace the path. That's very important. Take your time doing that. Secondly is the measurement between the landmarks. That is also quite critical. And finally, the third thing that matters is positioning things as accurate as you can. So I hope you found this useful, and I look forward to seeing you in the remaining parts. Thank you.